I hear a lot of talk about old-time great fighters.
To right now say that he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, it's not right.
Canelo Alvarez is causing a huge debate among current boxing fans. While most, like myself, are just sitting back appreciating his effort into becoming a legendary fighter in his own right, an army of armchair experts is rising and hell-bent on playing down every aspect of his legacy, whether it be his resume or skill set.
They paid him to go in the ring just to not give Canelo Alvarez no kind of nothing, no kind of competition. It was nothing. It was trash.
Fans have the right to their own opinion, as out there as they can often be. But what has driven me to make this video is the ever-growing boxing journalists, particularly on Twitter, that seem to be creating a sort of fraudulent narrative around Canelo's name. I'm not Canelo's #1 fan, and today I will raise specific issues I have surrounding his career, but at the same time, scrutinizing various other aspects that lead me to believe we are witnessing the last of a dying breed, a genuine throwback fighter that deserves recognition while he's still an active champion.
No ha sido fácil llegar hasta aquí. Es un logro más para mi familia, para mi equipo, pero sobre todo para todos ustedes, para todo México.
Just how good is Canelo Alvarez actually? Before we start addressing some of the more detailed aspects of criticism, let's briefly break down Canelo Alvarez's career to get a rough gauge on how he stacks up historically to other ATGs. With only a handful of amateur fights to his name, Canelo Alvarez turned professional just after his 15th birthday, all the way back in 2005.
Cuando se decide hilar combinaciones, conecta bien el Canelo, pero está dejándose llegar.
The talent pool in the domestic Mexican scene is above average on a global scale, but due to the lack of high-ranking fighters, champions are rarely made on Mexican soil alone, often leading to a short trip over to the United States to start building a resume worthy of international acclaim. Canelo impressed local fans while still essentially learning on the job, often beating men twice his age for a modest paycheck. Here is how Canelo stacks up against other past great Latino boxers after 30 fights. As you can see, there isn't much in it. It's not that these guys were ducking and dodging their way to a title shot. It's more related to the talent pool in Latin American countries. They had to build a fan base on their patch before moving to America and creating a legacy. Their ability to sell tickets at local venues is vital in funding the start of their career.
Oh, what a combination for Canelo! Opening round. Oh, he nails! And he goes down! This time, I don't think he's getting up!
Fight by fight, Canelo started improving his resume, notching veterans and top contenders to his record. Matthew Hatton became his first victim as a world champion, whereafter he closed out his first run on HBO by essentially ending the championship-level career of Sugar Shane Mosley.
These kids are beating me up, huh? I guess you could say that.
Canelo took his career to another level once he joined Showtime Sports in 2012, where during his time on his new network, he carved out 2 impressive wins for his resume in Austin Trout and Eris Landry Lara, exceeded further by his first and only career loss against the pound-for-pound king, Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Good combination there by Mayweather, connects to the right hand, and Canelo beginning to converse with Mayweather as he comes forward.
There's a huge negative stigma surrounding these fights, and that's something I'm looking forward to addressing in later chapters today.
No sé qué puedo decirle. Hice mi trabajo perfecto y fue tremenda mierda lo que hicieron.
Canelo found his manpower during his mid-20s, stringing together consecutive destructive performances over guys that were simply not on his level.
Is he counting or is it all over?
Now it's over.
All over.
It's over.
He knocked him out cold.
Now it's time for him to take the risk. He got to quit hiding behind the flag and fight Triple G.
Yeah, of course, Canelo, he's a special guy. He's not a regular champion.
Triple G, is there anything you'd like to tell Canelo?
Good luck in September.
La suerte es para los mediocres, my friend.
With Mayweather and Pacquiao more or less out of the frame for pound-for-pound contention, Canelo joined a group of fresh faces trying to claim the new #1 spot. Gennady Golovkin was another amongst those names, and because he competed only 6 pounds Canelo Sr., a showdown between the two was inevitable, and, in the eyes of many, would decide the new flag bearer for boxing.
Upper body movement from Canelo, pressuring his opponents and landing power punches. to the body by Canelo Alvarez. Good right hand from Triple G.
Yeah, it was.
Canelo looking good early in this fight.
Their styles gelled to produce a genuine all-time classic where the two Iron Chin gladiators slugged out a controversial draw before Canelo adapted his style in the rematch a year later to earn, in the eyes of many, a slightly less contested decision. Although, I have a contentious view on both of these fights, which I'll share in a later chapter.
But to have Canelo Alvarez winning 118, 110, that judge needs to be tested now.
Once Golovkin was out of the way, it was open season for every fighter from 160 to 175, which included Daniel Jacobs, Billy Joe Saunders, and Sergey Kovalev, three top guys in their respective weight class.
Oh, well, he's caught him with a left hand, and his balance went completely in the...
Canelo recently became the undisputed champion at super middleweight, yet for fans like myself that don't get too caught up in the importance of belts, we were just happy to see one of the top guys in boxing fighting more actively and against better competition than his peers. The 2021 Fighter of the Year, without a doubt.
Canelo is in this weird place where he's kind of cleaned out the division. And not just that division, he's kind of cleaned out a lot of divisions.
Let's head back to the Latin American Legends chart to see how Canelo stacks up after 60 pro fights. Comparing an active fighter with legends of the past isn't usually something I'd do. Still, it's better that we put this information out there now so the wider viewing audience can understand some cross-references later on. I've never been a fan of rating someone purely by their numbers because context is key. So let's jump into some of the controversies that hinder Canelo's legacy in the eyes of his detractors. Canelo has accumulated so many controversies over the years. I just went ahead and created an iceberg so we could at least categorize them in a way that separates genuine blemishes from far-out theories.
But you know why they won't do that? Because they don't want to actually catch Canelo's cheating. Because if, God forbid, you catch this guy cheating again and you got to spend them for 2-3 years, then you all lose money and it's a big problem.
I'll try not to give my opinion on any of the entries by simply relaying the facts or theory, using the evidence or argument that is often made for each case. Canelo failed 2 drug tests on 2 different occasions in 2018 after trace levels of clenbuterol were found in his system. Clenbuterol is an androgenic antagonist used to treat people with various respiratory conditions. However, the WADA-banned substance is also used as a performance-enhancing stimulant to give athletes improved stamina while training and the ability to retain lean muscle mass while cutting weight. Clenbuterol is a common drug of choice for many boxers looking to get an edge, not just for its anabolic-like effects, but also for the fact that it's found in contaminated meat, which makes for a semi-reasonable excuse if it's found in your system.
Taking away the 6-month ban, Canelo will always be labelled as a drug cheat, whether he did it or not.
Gentlemen, vamos.
As we mentioned earlier, Canelo Alvarez has several victories people are dubious of, none more so than his triumph over Eris Landry Lara in 2014, where the Cuban matched Canelo's aggression with slick, powerful counterpunching on the back foot.
Cuts him off there and scores one.
I've watched this fight numerous times and still don't have a conclusive winner. BoxRec lists 89 sports media members who scored the contest 114-114 as average overall. It was a close fight, but not a robbery by rational standards.
It's a good observation. He's stacking with more confidence in these rounds than he was earlier on.
Quite a comical one that every boxing fan agrees on, as CJ Ross's 114-114 scorecard suggesting Canelo deserved a draw against Floyd Mayweather in 2013 reeks of corruption.
Via majority decision.
Maybe CJ Ross had a bathroom break during the fight. I don't know.
CJ also scored Bradley beating Pacquiao a year prior, which again was outlandish, to put it mildly.
CJ Ross, that criminal, that corrupt or incompetent, whatever you want to call her. I don't know what she is, but this is the second time she's done this.
The right man got the decision in the end, but that didn't stop the Nevada State Athletic Commission from relieving her of her duties, thankfully indefinitely. Some people think Canelo won them both. Others think Triple G won the pair. Canelo won, Golovkin won. Ultimately, every outcome is theorized with some level of reason by the majority of boxing fans.
Good right hand from Triple G.
Yeah, it was.
Canelo looking good early in this fight.
I personally thought the first fight could have been scored a draw, while the second was comfortably in Golovkin's favor, which I can assure you is entirely against popular opinion. As reading comments, blogs, and social media posts are a part of my daily job, I have to say the overall feeling amongst fans is Golovkin was hard done by in both bouts. This is just a reality once a fighter reaches a certain level. They can dictate who and when they fight.
Beautiful body shot.
A guy like Canelo, this guy can do, he can pick and choose who he want to fight.
Every A-side fighter in history has done it, some worse than others. But in Canelo's defense, at least he fights actively. So, once a fighter like Rocky Fielding, for example, is inevitably blown away, you know there's a good chance a super fight is around the corner. Canelo does give off a vibe that he's hunting weaker champions across multiple weight classes to add belts to his collection. Yet, when you scroll down the resume, Gennady Golovkin, Eris Landry Lara, and Floyd Mayweather are all listed and were all the top guys in their respected weight categories when he fought them. An extension of the cherry-picking topic, weight bullying is another method Canelo is accused of utilizing to pad out his resume with decent names that have to destroy themselves physically to reach his weight demands.
You know, I mean, I'm naturally a 147-pound fighter, and this challenge came, and it was very hard to turn down.
Canelo is 100% guilty of this, particularly during his early HBO days, where he went on a run of just beating up welterweights for fun. Dare I mention the Josecito Lopez fight? The guy was a super lightweight thrown in as a sacrificial lamb for Canelo to pulverize on his Showtime debut.
A game, but overmatched Josecito Lopez.
Was that the difference in this fight, fighting just a much bigger, more powerful man?
Definitely, yeah. It's way out of my weight.
I can only assume that this alludes to the fact Alvarez is ducking fighters that have the ability to outbox him in a similar style to Floyd Mayweather, off the back foot, i.e. Demetrius Andrade. Yet his last two fights resulted in him beating up and breaking down two highly touted slick boxers in Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders. So, once you tie that into the fact he's already fought Lara and Mayweather, it's an argument that doesn't hold up very well. My 2 cents, Canelo versus Andrade will happen, Alvarez will beat him, and then boxing fans will flock to the next guy that resembles Mayweather or Lara somehow. Canelo's hand-wrapping scandal was first brought to light ahead of his 2018 rematch with Gennady Golovkin. It's not remarkably close to the Antonio Margarito scandal, so hold your horses. From what I remember, Canelo was caught stacking a high amount of gauze and tape underneath his wraps. Triple G's trainer thought that this was an illegal tactic, but it turned out stacking gauze and tape didn't break any of the Nevada State Athletic Commission's rules. It's similar to what happened to Tito Trinidad 20 or so years ago, where his wraps were deemed legal/illegal depending on what state he fought in. It's not something used against him often today, but for many years people questioned Canelo's chin due to that one time he got rocked by Miguel Cotto's brother, Jose.
In the opening round, Alvarez quickly learned a lesson from the veteran Cotto. And he is wobbled by a left hook, and he's in trouble, and Cotto's jumping him. Still wobbling, still having trouble getting his feet under him.
We have since seen him absorb punches from stone-cold killers, to a point where questioning his chin today is ludicrous.
Big left hand there from Jacobs. Jacobs now with a flurry.
I said I would remain impartial, but sometimes you just have to say it like it is. Only the most blindsided fan would pick Trout as the winner.
Canelo now knows what the assignment is. Works the body, good right hand by Canelo. There's a good jab behind the gut. Just with a big shot.
It was a close fight, but a tight one Alvarez won. We had to put the most outlandish at the bottom, but in complete honesty, it's not something I'd write off, considering some of the wacky stories I've covered just on my YouTube channel alone. Parker had arranged for a mysterious corner team to poison him throughout the bout, obviously without his consent. Kovalev was winning the fight against Canelo, unsurprisingly so, granting his natural size advantage and elite skill set that, in all fairness, was fading with age. And then, boom, everything just fell apart in a matter of seconds and Canelo scored a brutal knockout.
Oh, well, he's caught him with a left hand.
People question the legitimacy of the KO based on something just not feeling right, and I get that. But finding a motive where Kovalev losing on purpose would benefit him financially is difficult.
You know, all jokes aside, no, he got hit with a good shot. He got hit with a hook. His legs got the wobbling one way. Then Canelo brought the right hand back. I mean, he punched straight through him. It's not a dive. He got hurt. He was tired. He was worn down. Canelo put a lot of pressure on him. And he waited for him to wear down. He went to the body good, and he caught him, man.
Alvarez took a leap of faith that night and dared to be great. I admittedly tweeted he should take it and run, but here we are in 2022, and the Mexican is planning on an even more daring stunt. I'm sure most of you have heard the latest news that Canelo is likely moving up to Cruiserweight to fight the WBC champion, Olunga Makabu.
It's a big mistake Canelo gonna make if he choose that, because Cruiserweight is not a small television.
For those of you that don't know, Canelo started his career at welterweight, 147 pounds, won his first world title at junior middleweight, 154, followed further by winning multiple world titles across 160, 168, and 175, where today, he is currently a 4-division world champion. If Canelo does eventually fight and beat Makabu, that would put him in the company of the only 5 fighters who have achieved this feat since the modern weight categories began. Impressive stuff, but he is using his position as the A side and, quite honestly, the face of boxing to manipulate his way into the history books as, say, Adrian Broner did. Well, yes and no, but I lean much closer to the no side. Canelo isn't planning a 2 or 3 pound jump up like, for instance, Donnie Nietes or Kazuto Ioka have done to become multi-weight champs, which is almost like a natural progression with age for the smaller guys. Canelo is moving from 168 directly to 190 and facing a legitimate world champion that has earned his stripes against Dmitry Kudryashov, Tabiso Mchunu, and Olanrewaju Duradola, all of which would obliterate any fraud trying to capture a strap at 190.
And the right hook from Makabu. Big left hook on that. What a left hand from Junior Makabu.
You choose the wrong man.
Fantastic shot stand. Even up.
You understand? I'm coming for you.
I mean, look, Canelo and Eddie, they want to make history. They want to do things that prove how great they are, and that's another example. If they can beat Makabu
I'm not sure whether I'm just getting old or the punches I took in sparring during my youth are starting to catch up to me, but I'm beginning to agree with more and more opinions coming from the controversial boxing writer Dan Rafael, who in this tweet indirectly calls out the BS being spouted out by the likes of Mike Coppinger. How a prominent reporter for boxing can have such an entitled outlook regarding this event is baffling. I think if Canelo were fighting someone like Kudryashov, a non-champion at 190 that Makabu has already beaten, everyone would be praising the idea that Canelo is moving to Cruiserweight. Yet, because he's getting an immediate title shot, this sort of Canelo's cheating his way to greatness stuff is starting to gather weight.
I'd take a Briedis fight over Beterbiev at light heavyweight. I think he's a better chance. Briedis is an amazing fighter, by the way.
Let's see how he does against Makabu before we start mentioning Maris Briedis. I distinctly remember an old shot Sergey Kovalev giving Canelo a bit of a boxing lesson before he got flattened, and that was at 175.
Get into his head. Good left hand there from Kovalev. He was backing up just slightly, gave himself a bit of room.
Oh, of course, Mike, I forgot. Why doesn't Canelo just do what Roy Jones did against John Ruiz and start displaying a level of athleticism that he could only dream of even if he only weighed 140 pounds? There are weight categories for a reason, and while I can admit that Makabu isn't the most skilled champion in boxing, he's tough and can punch like hell, which will be a new challenge for Canelo as he'll essentially be in a battle of brute force against a naturally much bigger man. What a stupid comparison. Canelo, unlike Jones, will be in the pocket against Makabu, trading shots. I have no doubt he could win the fight in this manner, but to suggest it'll be an easy blowout based on what Roy Jones did to Ruiz all those years back makes no sense to me at all.
I look 5 times better than a Bernard Hopkins and anybody else that you've seen in the last 12 years, understand?
If you're someone that rates a boxer purely off the eye test, then this chapter's for you, as we thought it'd be fun to create a performance card live as the chapter develops.
He's just smart, to be honest with you. He's just clever. He closes ground up without throwing. He sets little traps so he keeps you thinking.
I'm not an expert in the technical side of boxing, it's just not my forte, so each stat listed will be based on my honest but limited boxing knowledge in this regard. Speed. An accumulation of offensive quickness with feet and hands is something Canelo has improved on over the years, more so his flat feet, a problem that plagued him during some of those tough and controversial fights we mentioned earlier.
Still Floyd Mayweather. And Mayweather catches him coming in.
I feel that he has recently improved his ability to cut off the ring, using his feet to cut the angle, particularly in his last outing against Plant. As for hand speed, I'd say Canelo is above average. I think people often exaggerate his ability in this regard, not to say he's slow, far from it. But it's the timing and accuracy that makes the quickness of the delivery so much more meritorious. Using Gary Russell Jr. and Joe the Juggernaut Joyce as our measurements for the extremes of both ends, I would rate Canelo around 88.
Come on, bring it. Back and forth they go.
Both these guys have taken the other's best shot.
It's hard to rate someone's heart that has never hit the canvas, and outside of the odd moment has never really been hurt. However, Canelo has shown a lot of heart to keep pushing forward when things aren't going his way.
Here's your combo with the jab, smart jab, just like that. Smart jab, jab. Don't get too confident, but don't want to speak too soon, but this is good work for Billy Joe Saunders.
This is great work by
Canelo often takes a while to get into fights, but never lets the fact he is 3 or 4 rounds down deter him from executing the game plan. The day will come where this side of Canelo will be tested, but for now, 93 seems reasonable to me. OG fans around here know that I don't slack when it comes to making a highlight reel. And about 2 years ago, I made one for Canelo's defense, breaking down every round from every fight that has footage, roughly 40 from what I remember.
Lots of jabs, nothing landed. However, Canelo is moving and not punching.
As good as the moves look in a highlight reel, Canelo often uses defense as more of a showboating tactic, getting into the head of his opponent while taking a round or two off.
Oh, good shot, Golovkin. Terrific right hand.
I love it from a viewer's standpoint, but the real flashy stuff is only winning style points. Canelo's bread and butter comes from being the more shrewd and astute fighter in the pocket. This usually involves him getting tagged a fair amount. The times Canelo does put defense and attack together in harmony always looks great because he's an exceptional, accurate counterpuncher. I think 87 is fair, but could see how someone would rate it higher.
Fight. Never gonna give up.
On his legs and on there.
Power is about more than just the ability to clean someone's clock. It's the accumulated effect it has on even the most conditioned opponents.
This is why people are
Canelo can knock people out with one shot, as we know, but breaking fighters down with raw power punches to the entire upper torso is what makes him the special fighter he is. He reminds me of Rocky Marciano in more ways than one, and for that reason, anything less than 90 power would be unjust.
I mean, with the shot I got caught off Canelo, I think Canelo would knock the horse out, man. I mean, when he hit me, you know, it was going to be lights out.
The main reason we can't calculate Canelo's heart is because his chin is practically uncrackable. It's a scary feeling when you hit a man with everything you got and they brush it off and keep coming forward. Lara, Kirkland, Cotto, and Golovkin all got off some troubling shots, but nothing remotely bothered the Iron Chin Mexican. I'll go with a 96 for now, but we're heading into George Foreman territory if he comes through the Makabu fight unscathed.
As you can see, it's southpaw out of Capitol Heights, Maryland, very compact.
You can be the fastest, most powerful fighter in the world, but it matters little if you don't know how to utilize your strengths.
Just keeping him at bay with those shots. Now he's got to move.
Canelo is a crafty fighter that's often one step ahead of his opponents. You can tell he practices a lot of different feints and traps in the gym, which is paying dividends on fight night.
Nice combination from Alvarez. Rocked him. And Jacobs a little bit stunned.
Canelo is an expert at throwing the punches you don't see coming, being the ring general, pacing himself, overall, just outthinking his opponent. And for that, I have to give him 92 for his ring IQ. Overall, it's a well-rounded card, but Canelo still has flaws, none more so than the aforementioned flat feet, which is an obvious problem against slick boxers with the ability to remain slick through adversity, but also against 190-pound lumbering cruiserweights that have you at arm's length for 12 rounds.
You choose the wrong man, I'm telling you. You're you're supposed to know took this fight because I'm coming. You understand?
This video was initially intended to respond to what I feel are overcritical fans and media that are so caught up in attracting attention to their social posts and blogs that they're missing what's, to me at least, clearly the last of a dying breed. If you've got a gripe with Canelo for picking and choosing the odd, more straightforward opponent, then prepare yourself for what's to come with a bunch of entitled rising young fighters calling themselves the GOAT before they have even beaten a single fighter ranked in the top 10.
That's why I got it on my shoulder, Warrior, baby. My first tattoo.
As I said in the intro, I'm not Canelo's #1 fan. In fact, modern boxing generally doesn't give me the same satisfaction as reading and creating content around its history. However, when I see a fighter like Canelo being criticized for doing what few others of this era dare comprehend, I had to drop the dusty old ring mag and express my honest view on this current topic. If you'd like to see other fighters featured on the series, whether past or present, let me know in the comment section below, as I actually had a lot of fun putting this together and think I could expand the analytical side of it even further to give you an even more detailed breakdown. Until next time, this is BLTV, signing off.